Hello and welcome to my analysis slash speculation video of the Xenoblade 3 trailer and any other released content we have. Full disclaimer, this will have spoilers for, first two games as well as their DLCs or extra stories and whatnot. So if you haven't played either of the games, I wouldn't recommend watching this right now. So go and play them because they're great games and then come back. Also, this video is going to have just a ton of speculation on my part, so don't count on any of this being correct. I just find it a lot of fun thinking about possibilities and what they might or might not do and whatnot. So this is just me kind of rambling about my thoughts about the game, and really don't take it as the word of Takahashi, essentially, because a lot of what I'm going to say is not official yet. Don't take any of it officially. Before we review the trailer, we're going to review the trailer and look at a few things there. First, I'd like to look at the Nintendo UK site, because they released all of the information about the characters. Some screenshots here, bringing together the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2. We kind of speculated that at the end of Xenoblade 2, the architect, Klaus, his last act was to essentially re-merge the universes that he had split, essentially, because he had kind of caused a fracture in the universe with himself and his other ego, Zanza. After Zanza was killed, he basically merged the two realities, is what it looks like happened. There's some sense of that in Future Connected. This is actually living out all of that, which is really cool, because it brings our theories to fruition, finally, because we've been theorizing this, so this a lot of why I believe that some of what I say might end up coming true, but again, don't take my word for it. We'll see what happens. Kiev, a nation where mechanical technology was developed, their armies are composed of units consisting mainly of combat vehicles. They use units of small mobile weapons operated by soldiers riding them. So that's basically the HOMS from Xenoblade 1. HOMS slash Machina and whatnot, because they kind of join forces and everything at the end of the game, so sharing the R&D to all their technology. So what they do in Xenoblade 1 is they take the ether and they kind of condense it into like a fuel that they can then use in their technology. The next group, it calls it the Agnes, a nation strong in ether, a magical technology. Their forces are built around units that specialize in ether combat, and they fight with small, mobile, autonomous weapons that use ether technology. In these screenshots, you can see them focusing into like beams or shields and swords and blades and whatnot, so it re-emits the ether in different ways. That's how they harness the ether, which is different than obviously the Kievs, which use it as a fuel source to fuel their technology, which doesn't re-emit it. It re-emits energy that it uses the ether to make. 6 soldiers hailing from these nations will take part in a grand tale with life as its central theme. Noah, one of the protagonists of Xenoblade 3 and soldier of Kiev's, Noah is also an Offseer who mourns for soldiers who have lost their lives on the battlefield. So obviously he has some pretty strong connection to the ether then, because we kind of know that blades and people in Xenoblade 2 have a connection to the ether, and they basically return to the ether, and this is kind of the same with 1, but this is more of a spiritual sense in the series, and that was more so in 2 than it was in 1. 1, it was more of a source of energy or whatever that returned to Zanza, essentially. That's what he created, at least. It says lands here. I'm pretty sure this is a translation error on the localization team's part. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be pronounced Lance. So, lands, I don't know if it's going to be pronounced Lance somehow, but it's supposed to be Lance in the Japanese translation. An ally of Noah who wields a great sword that doubles as a shield. So he's kind of like Rhine from Xenoblade 1. Uni, it's actually spelled Y-U-N-I in Japanese. It actually has a meaning for strong heart and spirited, and a few other things. Strong ties or conjoined or something like that. It kind of makes sense as like a party member and as it says here, a childhood friend of Noah and Lance who has a sharp tongue and rough personality. She specializes in healing her allies in battle. So she's a healer. So we have attack, tank, and healer. Pretty standard class of characters. Mio, the other protagonist of this story. Mio is a soldier of Agnes and an Offseer, just like Noah. So they're both Offseers. So they have something in common, apparently. But they're special from their own respective nations, essentially. We have Tyon, a tactician who fights alongside Mio using his smarts and insight. And then we have, I believe, Senna. I don't think it's Senna. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Senna. This soldier is an ally of Mio and Tyon. Despite her petite figure, Senna wields immense physical strength. So that's all the characters. There might be more, and maybe they're just not telling us, but that's all they're giving us so far. We also have the Japanese site. So this one also has the same information, pretty much, just roughly translated. It also mentions Ionion. I don't know exactly. So The Japanese even says Ionion in the Japanese trailer, but for some reason the English trailer, they're pronouncing it Ionios. It's kind of like Bionis or Mechonis. They're doing that again, I guess. Don't know what it's referring to here. I think that's related to, it gets confused when it's trying to mention the Offseer ability with Noah and Mio. Uni here is pronounced, or is spelled this way. This is the way it wants to spell Lance. I think it's supposed to be pronounced like Lance, you know. This was a press release kind of thing from Takahashi, the producer, whoever he is exactly in the team. He's basically the main creator and everything. Him and his team. He has a couple other people that helps him. To summarize it, you can pause and read it if you want, or you can kind of look this up for yourself if you want. He says that development's basically done, and he also mentions that the scene at the end of the trailer, which is this title screen here, it was conceived back between the development of Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 somehow. So they had planned far ahead for this, and Takahashi loves his trilogies, which is kind of how we knew there was going to be a third game. This is some screenshots. I'm going to go to the trailer now. We're kind of going to analyze this a little bit. So he also mentions that the flute has some importance, which
fighting in order to live,
I don't know what kind of importance
and
it
living to fight
has at the moment. My only speculation is it has some kind of an effect on the ether, I think. Not entirely sure. You can kind of see that there's like an emblem on their swords and everything. There's this ring here. You can see part of it is illuminated. See, it's blue here. It's kind of wrapping halfway around it.
That's the way of our...
And that seems to be kind of a consistent thing with all of the weapons, actually.
Ionios.
You can also see here in the mouth of this giant mech, there's another ring, and it's only partially filled with the blue light. Ionios, that's how they pronounce it.
Tell me!
So you can see he has it too. Let me move back a little bit. See, it wraps around partially, only about halfway.
Me! What would possess you to...
And if you look at the weapons here with Mio, I think I'm gonna have to skip back a little further. It's not super clear, but you can kind of see something similar. So right here, you can see it's a very similar kind of thing. I'm not exactly sure what that's related to. It could be related to the Offseer ability. Not entirely sure that's true because it was on the other soldiers' weapons as well. So it may have something to do with the ether and their ability to use it. The Agnes, with like Mia here, harness the ether through tools basically and output it in a different way essentially. In this case, it's forming blades. So it may have something to do with the strength possibly? We'll see it change different. We can also see that he's wearing similar clothing as the soldiers. Same with Mio here. I don't know how early on this is. Probably really early on. Seeing this hit here, he looks totally fine. And here you can see some particle effects that may depict it's either blood or it's his clothing, because you can see the markets that are left on his clothing. So it may be the clothing that tears. It may not be anything else actually. So that's kind of interesting.
I refuse to believe you're him.
This could be the thing that he says here. I refuse to believe you're him. That could be related to someone either coming back or someone existing that was maybe a legend or something of that sort. Not a ton to go off of from that.
You're him.
I knew it. I saw this coming.
So
this coming.
So either this voice happens to be the voice of Sena, or I think it may be Pyra potentially. It's kind of hard to tell. So the only reason why I speculate it could be Pyra is because the voice is too high pitched to be Mithra, unless Mithra is tamed down a little bit. She's the only one, as far as we know, that doesn't have an accent. That's my main reasoning for that.
I knew it. I saw this coming.
It might be Senna, but I think Senna would have a kind of a different tone. You can also see that gauge thing on her weapon as well.
Coming.
This looks like Vandom. Not exactly sure if this is actually him. The hair looks correct. The scar and everything on his face looks right. I mean, he's got more hair on his face than the original Vandom did. So there's actually a voice clip that I'll play right now.
Vandom, you think highly of Rex, do you not?
Ah, that little shrimp reminds me of my boy. I'm all right. Honest.
And this voice clip obviously casually mentions that he apparently has a son, so it could either be that or maybe somehow got resurrected.
You're not enemies now.
Fine for you.
He also says you're not enemies now. I think that has to do with Mio and Noah, their respective companions, joining forces. Or he could be referring to them not being enemies to him anymore. It could be either way, really. It could be saying you guys aren't enemies anymore. It could be conversation with him where he's talking to your party. And he's talking about both sides, both nation sides, basically. Like, you different groups are no longer enemies now. Related to some story beat that's happening.
Not enemies now.
Fine for you, isn't it?
This character kind of reminds me of potentially Shulk, but you notice something's on his hand here, and he also has something on his hand right here. Pretty clear. This is the symbol of their nation, I believe. And then his guard here, he's got it on his chin for some reason. So they basically have them tattooed somewhere. I believe Mio and the Agnes, I think they might have like a talent or something tied to them. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just a style choice, but she has this weird knot here that resembles something later on. So it's possible that it's connected. I'm not sure, but I can't find any other
Fine for you, isn't it?
any
All
other
that
similarity.
time you've got.
You could try.
Here, it kind of looks like they're exchanging flutes, which, if you look here, they're now wearing their casual clothing, essentially, signifying that they've abandoned their respective nations. And now they're using different flutes suddenly. He's using the lighter colored one, which also happens to have the Aegis colors, the emerald green. This one's all black with some red to it, and he's obviously got the same style clothing going on.
You could try. Try to move
I
forward
think they're
again.
exchanging them there. You can see the circle, the blue circle and everything. You can see that Uni here has the emblem tattooed right here.
They're not your friends anymore. They're his few
He's using some kind of like origami. It's kind of interesting. It's almost like seals or something maybe on them. It almost reminds me of something, but
anymore.
this is probably related to
They're
his
his
ability. He's able to
Not.
control them with ether, probably.
Land pierced by a great sword. It's the only way you're gonna defeat the real enemy.
So here the Vandam or something, because that's what it sounds like. He's explaining the Great Sword. I think that may have something significant, kind of like the Great Tree had in Xenoblade 2. It could be kind of an end goal that they all are going for related to the existential crisis or whatever it is that's brought them together, because obviously something big must be happening for them to go over enemy lines to then traverse the world. Looks like we can control boats. That's kind of fascinating.
Whatever life is
Some giant mech designed by the Kieves.
lost, I won't let you shoulder it all alone.
So right here, she says something along the lines of, whatever lives are lost, I won't let you shoulder it alone. I'm pretty sure this is also related to their off-seer ability, where they mourn the lost souls in the war, basically. Some kind of compassionate moment, I guess, heart-to-heart or something between them.
What good filling up these flickering clocks in our eyes? It'll
She mentioned something about filling up flickering clocks, or the closed caption seems to think blocks. I'm not sure which one it is. Again, it could be related to these circles on their weapons or something. So you can kind of see it looks like it might be more full on this one here, on our weapon here. Or whatever she's referring to here is meaning that it's absorbing the ether, the life energy from people after they die, and that's probably partly to do with the war in some way, whatever it's about. Pretty sure it has something to do with the souls, essentially, the lost souls during the war. It could be related to that, because she's basically saying, what's the point in killing the other side when it's not going to bring back our friends? That's basically, I think, what she's
what
saying
good
here.
filling up these flickering clocks in our eyes? It'll never replace the friends we've lost.
The flame clock, it has to go.
I think she says something about flame clock. Also notice that thing right in here, the core, whatever you want to call it, the ring that's half filled, is also now blue in this scene for some reason. It looks closer to the keys technology now, so it's possible that it changed just because these are now being developed by Keys. They're now Keys technology instead of the Agnes technology. Or that it's changed because of something new that we're not aware of related to what it indicates.
Never replace the friends we've lost.
And you can see a similar emblem here that's like halfway filled up, but it's green. So that's kind of
Flame
fascinating.
clock, it has to go.
Ouroboros, a boy.
This appears to be Melia from Xenoblade 1. You can tell by the curly hair. I don't think any other Hyantia has that. Plus, she's obviously a person of royalty in this.
For this world. They must be erased without a trace.
And that's Nia. Nia is the leader of Agnes, while Melia is apparently the leader of Kieves. We'll have to see
They must be erased
what
without a trace.
what this is related to. So you can see this knot here. I think it's meant to look more like a flower, obviously, like flower petals. Talons hanging down here. It kind of makes it look more like a cross. I don't know if that's intentional or not. Takahashi and his team has been known to reference things from the Bible on multiple occasions, so it's a possibility.
Erased without a trace.
And then we get the title here. This is the Orion Titan split open, and it's covered in snow. And it kind of looks like snow particles floating around, or maybe that's ether. Not sure, but it kind of looks like it might be snow. So another thing to note here is the symbol that the Kieves brand is in the 3 in the title here, which is fascinating. And if you look at the title here, it kind of looks like it's either one of two things. It kind of looks like it's icy and snowy, potentially, because Xenoblade 2's was flames and fire coming off of it. This looks like it might be ice, or, this is another thing I just thought of, this could be related to the Ether and or the souls related to the war. Because you can see that floating around them. They are the Offseers, so that could be related. It could be related to the Ether then, in this case. So that's fascinating. And then we just get the date, which is September. I believe the date is, they probably could have gotten the game out sooner. I believe it's not just because they want to make sure the game's absolutely ready for release, but I think they just kind of want it to be fall or later in the year, closer to holiday. That's probably the goal, is to have it in that part of the year. So then they're like, well, you just have the extra time to make sure everything's all buttoned up. So that's probably the earliest they're willing to release it, even though the game's so completed, basically, because Xenoblade 2 did not have, by its reveal, didn't even have any English voice casts ready. Not sure what are in the timeline some of this is, because I'm pretty sure there's a conflict going on for a good portion of it, and there's a possibility that there'll be kind of a back and forth where you're going back and forth between Noah and Mio in points of the story, where you get to control them independently, going back and forth with each other's party members until they cross paths a couple times, and eventually some kind of showdown happens where they kind of come to an understanding, or something threatens them that they have to come together over to save the world, basically. That's kind of what we're expecting, because otherwise why would they cross lines for that? This is one of the Kieves colonies. This looks like some kind of mobile fortress, potentially, for the Agnes. This is another Agnes fortress, I believe, and it's got that symbol that we've been seeing, and this one's going the opposite direction, so that's kind of fascinating. And you can see Tyon here with his new outfit and his scarf, basically.
It's the only way you're gonna enemy.
So this looks like the Lothlorien archipelago. It's got that tropical landscape, and there's a bunch of islands and stuff. You can see them from here. You can see all the different islands scattered around. I think there's another one over on this side. Looks like one of those dragon things you could find around the Cloud Sea in Xenoblade 2. There's also this. This kind of looks like more Dane, but based off of the lights, there's a possibility this is the interior of the Kieves fortress. It does have kind of a design after the Machina and the Mechonis capital in a way. Otherwise, it could be more of a Dane kind of style, but it does kind of have that more steampunk kind of style to it. So it could be either one. Based off the light and everything, I'd almost say that it's a Kieves fortress now, because it doesn't have the green. This as well, this looks like it's probably Kieves related because of the blue glowing light. That signifies the energy that the Kieves, when they harness the energy of the ether, basically, as fuel. We got some floating islands here, which is kind of odd. There's some special rock that allowed for that kind of flotation with land masses in Future Connected. So looks like we'll have up to 4 party members out at a time. In Xenoblade 2, we had 3 active party members, but there were 6 characters on screen because they were pairs of 2. The driver and Blade. I'm assuming the combat is going to be just as good as the second game, because they've gone nowhere but up so far. I'd be really surprised if they made something less enjoyable than Xenoblade 2. I had a lot of fun with Xenoblade 2's combat, because the dynamic between the driver and Blade was really awesome, and the special attacks were really cool. But we didn't get any gameplay here. We just got a lot of running around and swimming, apparently. This character, Uni, seems to have almost like a lance, but a rifle at the same time. It's kind of odd. Also, the sword that Noah wields kind of resembles the Monado to an extent. Both the Xenoblade 1 Monado and kind of Pyra and Mithra's sword as well. I'm assuming it's some sort of Monado replica, basically. Technology's been handed down, and they've kind of used them throughout history. It seems to be unique to him, even though it's just Kieves technology that he's using, essentially. But in the beginning here, they're using all kinds of different weapons. In this shot with the soldiers, they're using a lot of different kinds of weapons.
Ionios. Tell me.
And he's the only one using this sword. Anything that looks like this particularly.
What would...
I would also say that the protagonist here kind of looks like Dunban. Could be related to Dunban, and since he's on the Xenoblade 1 side, that would make sense. Could be some descendant of Dunban in some way. Obviously, Mio appears to be connected to Nia in one way or another. Could be just as simple as another Gormati that's also a flesh eater. You can tell they're a flesh eater by the core. Core is visible right here. It's also visible at the end. Visible right there. another flesh eater. I think someone speculated that this is like Rex and Pyra for some reason, which would be really silly. If there's anything related to the weird kind of souls thing that's kind of been hinted at here and there within the information we've gotten, it's possible they somehow either got turned into Nopon or moved to Nopon or something. Kind of small possibility. It's also possible that I think it's more likely that either they just happen to look like this for the fun of it and because of the developers, or maybe they styled themselves towards those characters for the fun of it. Maybe the characters themselves intentionally did it. The hair is kind of familiar, isn't it? Seeing as this one has a weapon, I think they both have a weapon. It looks like both of them could potentially fight. That would be interesting. These are some pretty good shots of the world, and looks like it may be absolutely massive, which is probably part of why it's taken so long. Alright, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.